Right now is E. Michael Jones. Culturewars.com is his website. He's got a great article over there called The Magi, the Hijab Crisis, and Iran's Divided Soul. Good morning to you, E. Michael Jones.
Good morning, Rudy. Good to see you.
We're grateful for you being on our program today. I went through your article. It's a very good article, and it gives us some good context and background. I want to set up this conversation first with, I've felt for a very long time now that United States foreign policy and foreign war regime change policy has been just insane. And it goes back so many, many years, even going back to the middle of World War II, sending people into Vietnam to train Ho Chi Minh. And it goes back even before that, of course. But I see, and I think you're seeing it too, in Iran, America has been really meddling with the affairs there for a long time. Give us your take.
Yeah, well, it was the beginning of psychological warfare, the beginning of the rise of the CIA. It all began in Iran. So 1953, Mossadegh was a popularly elected president whose main task was to make sure that the Iranians profited from the oil revenues from their country rather than the British petroleum. For his pains, he was basically overturned by one of the first psychological warfare operations. Let's say the first psychological warfare operation. Kermit Roosevelt went there, orchestrated a huge press campaign, tried to turn public opinion against him, put the Shah on the throne, and it was a great triumph for psychological warfare, but it was a catastrophe for American relations because it got them in the business of basically running Iran. So they put the Shah in power. He's a Westernizer. He's a close friend of the Rockefellers, interested in population control, everything the Rockefellers are interested in. And he offends the basically religious sensibilities of the country so much that in 1979, they overthrow that government. What happened here is basically the reverse engineering of what happened in 1953. Now it was the Islamic fundamentalists. The Ayatollah Khomeini mobilized them. But we're talking about people who were really not part of Iranian culture. And that's one of the important things you have to know about this. The Ayatollah Khomeini had Syed Qutb, he's the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, had his book translated into Farsi. And as a result, you had the imposition now of another type of regime on Iran that was in many ways just as alien as the CIA regime that got imposed in 1953. That's the Islamic Republic. That came into power in 1979. It's in power to this day. But the problem here is that it ran out of steam. In 1989 is when the Ayatollah Khomeini died. He's replaced by the new supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, who then, looking at the situation, makes a fateful decision. He introduces birth control into Iran. They had a population growth rate of 7 to 8 children per family.
Wow.
Now it plummets to the biggest drop in history. And now he's got a problem because basically what he's done is turn all of these women who are wearing the hijab, they're still wearing this traditional Muslim costume, turn them into feminist revolutionaries by introducing birth control. And that weak spot is something that is well known to the CIA, and that's what they've been trying to use ever since to basically overthrow this government.
Now, we're obviously having this conversation in context of the ongoing protests that are happening in Iran over the hijab, but I think it's the backstory, it's the greater context in your article that I found most fascinating. Can you talk about the conflict between the Arab world and the Persian world? It seems like the Persian culture has really been on the brink of extinction thanks to the pressures of the Arab world.
Well, no, it hasn't. That's the interesting part about this. So in the middle of the 7th century, it's kind of a fluke. You have the Persian Empire, which has been in existence for about 1,000 years at that point, conquered by a bunch of Arabs. Nobody knew who they were. They're this tribe in the middle of the Arabian Peninsula. They've been energized by this national epic, which is called the Quran, and they just ended up conquering the Persians, kind of by fluke. It was kind of a fluke. You know, it's the way battles are sometimes. So what happened is a huge crisis for Persian culture, because you have this new religion, Islam, imposed on them. And for 2 centuries, they don't say anything. There's total silence. They are stunned. And then finally, they start to emerge. They come back. The Persian culture emerges. The significant factor here is that the Persians never gave up their language. All of North Africa, for the most part, except for the Berbers, all gave up their language. Nobody speaks Egyptian in Egypt anymore. They all speak Arabic. This did not happen to the Persians, and as a result, they were able to preserve their culture. The basis of ethnic identity is language, and Farsi is the vehicle of that language. And so what happened here in the face of this crisis, where basically you had complete repression of philosophical thought under the caliphs, they turned to poetry. I just did a book called The Dangers of Beauty, which is the thesis of the book is oftentimes the artist can portray what the philosopher cannot explain. And oftentimes the philosopher can't explain something because it's too dangerous. This is what happened to one Persian philosopher after another. He got too close to the son of the caliph, and he gets his head chopped off. So they've reverted to poetry, and poetry preserves the language, Farsi, the Persian language, and it preserved Persian identity in a way that was not typical of countries conquered by the Arabs. And this is true to this day. So I was in Golistan. I met with the Ayatollah Shahrut. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Walk in. The first thing he wants to talk about is the Saudis. Now, the Saudis are an alien influence. They are not true Islam. What you're seeing for 1,500 years now, they have not resolved this crisis. And so the point I'm saying is that what we see now as the Islamic Republic is in many ways the pendulum swinging from Westernization to Islamic fundamentalism and back again. And that's the problem. The pendulum swings back and forth, and it never lands in the mean, the golden mean, which is Persian identity, which is, in a sense, kind of both, but kind of neither.
Yeah. So we're stuck between choosing the Saudi view of things or the foreign intelligence view of things, and we don't really understand. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't think I truly understand how to look at Iran properly, because, again, we're only given 2 lenses.
Yeah, and I think that the paradigm that I brought up, which is apropos for the season, is the Magi. Now, these were the first 3 non-Hebrews to see the Logos incarnate were Persians, or part of the Persian Empire. And how did they come to see the Logos incarnate? Well, they studied the Logos of the universe. They were astronomers. They were philosophers. You're talking about a period when my ancestors, I've said this before, but my ancestors in Germany were chasing pigs through the forest, and they are philosophers and astronomers. And they come and you follow the star, and you come to the Logos incarnate. And I think this is a paradigm. It predates the Islamic conquest by half a millennium, and I think it's perdured to this day, largely through poetry, but through this Persian sensibility that is not Arabic. It's not Arabic. They've tried to make their accommodation with the Quran, but their Islam, Shia Islam, is peculiar to them and considered heretical by the Sunni majority. And so they've never really had a comfortable fit. And so I'm saying, look,
hold that thought. I keep going back to 99% of the time we are told what lens to look at Iran through. You know, the United States, foreign intelligence, and the Saudi lens. But there's another one, too. I was just thinking about the Israeli lens. We're told to look at Iran through these lenses. And we can't really get a proper and true understanding of how to think about Iran and their relationship to their neighboring countries, to ourselves, and to the rest of the world. And I thought E. Michael Jones's article was doing a good job sort of cracking through all of that and giving us some more information. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Jones. So we were talking about these the culture of the Persians versus everyone else, really. But I keep coming back to this idea that, again, we are told what to look at and how to think of it. Like, so you got the hijab in these recent protests. You got the hijab versus liberal feminism. There's like no medium. There's no other way to look at that. I mean, how do you see it? Do you think that if they throw off the hijab in Iranian society, this will free women and everything is just going to get better? Do you think they'll find balance? Or do you think they're going to go to an extreme? What say you?
No, they'll end up like the West. Well, why would it happen any differently? I'm trying to address the ladies in Iran. I've done this before. I traveled around the country, talked at universities, and tried to bring up the idea of logos as a way of mediating here by saying there's a logos to everything, and we're rational creatures, and so we can figure it out. There's a logos to sexuality. We can figure that out. I think if we think about it, we can understand that there's a contradiction here between taking birth control pills and wearing the hijab. There's a contradiction there that I think human reason can resolve. And I'm saying, basically, let's take a step back right now. You got a completely polarized situation where the Western image of liberation has been imposed on the hijab. Okay, and it's the taking off the hijab is a revolutionary act. That's what it is. The lady who's in charge of the CIA operation is her name is Alinejad. She's got big head of frizzy hair. That's not the woman that you see, because that woman's dead. So dead men tell no tales. But this is the lady. This is the voice of the CIA. And the CIA is telling the ladies, take off your hijab and you will be happy, and you'll be, look at all the happy people in the West. Well, I'm saying, no, yeah, let's look at these people in the West. Look at the women who have followed this path and ask them if they're happy. Ask what happened to Catholic women. They did something similar in a minor way when they removed the veil. Remember, people used to wear a veil when they went to church. That doesn't happen anymore. I don't know whether there are direct consequences, but I know there are direct consequences from basically the corruption of Catholic religious orders that took place during the 1960s, when all of the nuns became feminists, and all of the feminist nuns started preaching sexual liberation to the Catholic girls in their Catholic schools in places like the suburbs of Philadelphia, where I grew up, where I went to school. And those people, those women, those Catholic women started acting out what those feminist nuns were telling them. And to a large extent, they wrecked their lives. And now we're stuck with this group. The election in Pennsylvania. Catholics always determine the election in Pennsylvania, and I think they did this time. But which Catholics are we talking about? We're talking about Catholic women who have had abortions. Once you do that, you now have taken on a new religious identity. I'm saying, obviously, you can repent and go to confession. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people who make a political cause through the Democratic Party with abortion, and they are the people that got Josh Shapiro elected. Josh Shapiro, because I'm saying what we found out just recently is abortion is a fundamental Jewish value. 140 Jewish organizations said that. If they said it, it must be true. What happens to these Catholic ladies when they have abortions? They become Jewish. And how do we know they become Jewish? Because they vote like Jews and they elect people like Josh Shapiro and a guy named Fetterman who couldn't even put two sentences together because he had brain damage. I'm telling the ladies in Iran, take a step back, because I'm coming from the future. And I will tell you what will happen to you if you take the hijab off and you engage in the CIA-directed coup that is determined to destroy your country.
Where does Islam stand on this abortion issue and contraception issue?
Islam does not have a consistent position on anything sexual. I had a debate with a mullah in Qom about human sexuality. It's clear he doesn't understand anything. He said, he came up with this statement in the middle of the debate: just because you start a Coke doesn't mean you have to finish a Coke. And I'm thinking, what did that mean? And at this point, the cameraman jumped in. The cameraman knew more about sex than the mullah. Well, you can go to Guam and you can get a one-day marriage.
Wow.
What does that say about human sexuality? I know a woman who got a one-year marriage. I said, well, what happens if you get pregnant? Who's going to raise the child after the year expires? This is totally contradictory. There's no consistent position on sexuality among the mullahs, and that's part of the discussion that has to take place in Iran if we want to back away from the abyss.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point, and I notice this to be true. And the conservatives will often say, "Well, we can," or I guess a lot of Christians, a lot of Catholics will say, "We can ally ourselves with Muslims and Jews in regard to the abortion question because they are pro-life as well." But neither the Jews nor the Muslims have a consistent view on this topic at all. But the question I have for you is going back to the question of feminism. What would you say to someone who responds and says, well, I agree feminism is bad and resulted in all these evils, but this is at least better than the abuse of women in these Muslim countries where women are killed and things like that. What would you respond to and that accusation or that response?
I'm saying that the CIA threat is causing a draconian reaction. That's precisely the problem here. Okay? And I'm saying what we need to do is step back from the crisis. Let's let the crisis calm down a little bit so we can have a reasonable discussion and come to some type of reasonable conclusion about this, where we're not being stampeded either to take the CIA position or take the extreme Islamicist position that has led us into this crisis in the first place. We're going to have to listen to the broad majority. Let's put it this way: the silent Persian majority, who have, when these people go, I've been to the mosque. These people go to the mosque. They are worshiping God as they understand Him. That's not a bad thing. That is part of their culture. We have to honor that culture, but we have to be willing to say, you're at an impasse. You painted yourself into a corner right now with the hijab crisis. Now, the question is, how do you get out of that problem? How do you get out of that corner now that you painted yourself into it? Pursuing this by executing people, I don't see as a productive way of proceeding. Now, I'm admitting here that taking off the hijab is just not like taking off your hat. This is a revolutionary act, and we know how our government deals with threats that are not revolutionary acts, like the January 6th so-called insurrection. Okay, so we have no basis to simply lecture these people about things like democracy when we don't have it to begin with. We have nothing but 50 years now of the sexual subversion of the basis of the moral basis of our culture, leading to unprecedented forms of tyranny, not just here, but in Europe as well. So we have no basis to lecture them. I'm trying to say there is a possibility. The possibility is called logos, and we need to have a discussion that will allow this majority to articulate its position as Persians.
Yes, I'd like to explore that a little bit with you, Dr. Jones. You talked about the history of the Persians before the break there. And I'm wondering, you have to have this conversation, it's true, but how do you see it playing out? How does Logos play out in Iran in the next 20 to 25 years? Do you anticipate anything changing? Do you anticipate them returning to more of a Persian identity?
Yes, I think it has to happen. I think the man of the hour is President Ahmadinejad. I think he was prevented from running for office by the supreme leader. I think this was a mistake. I think there's too much overreach now in terms of what the mullahs of their control of the society. There is an element of autonomy that the political process should have, and I think President Ahmadinejad can articulate this Persian identity. He is a Persian nationalist. He has an understanding of the people, the needs of the people. When he was a mayor of Tehran, he provided dowries for poor women so that they could get married. This is the type of person that needs to step in and mediate between the two extremes. Because if you don't have a mediator, you're going to swing back and forth once again. So once again, okay, are you ready, ladies? Are you ready for the next CIA revolution? Are you ready? The classic example of what I'm talking about is as I'm pondering this, I get an email. Talk to Ms. So-and-so. She's an Iranian. She went and got to law school. She's a liberated lady. She's a role model for all the Iranian women. Oh, but guess what she's doing now? She's not practicing law anymore. She has an OnlyFans account. This is where it's heading, ladies. Take off your hijab, and then pretty much you're going to take off all the rest of your clothes too, and you can have an OnlyFans account, and that's how you'll make money.
Wow.
That's no way to go. I'm saying there are other options here, and we have to explore those options in a kind of calm, reflective manner that bespeaks the really philosophical temperament of the Iranian people that has been suppressed for the past half century.
Yeah, amen. We're just about out of time. E. Michael Jones, culturewars.com. That's culturewars.com. The article is The Magi, the Hijab Crisis, and Iran's Divided Soul. E. Michael Jones, thank you for your time today. We're very grateful to you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. All right, that's going to do it for hour number one. If you can join us in the second hour, Dave Palmer is going to be our guest. We're going to be talking about the Summa Theologica. What did St. Thomas Aquinas teach about Christmas? I'm sure you're being told by coworkers, friends and family members, neighbors. It's all made up. Even December 25th, total fiction. Is it? Well, let's find out what St. Thomas had to say. All that and more, plus the game show. Don't forget, I'm giving away that prize on the email list. Go to grnonline.com/CDT. And we'll see you back here on Monday morning.